Good evening. I'm Gadi Schwartz. Thanks for joining us tonight on the eve of President Donald Trump's inauguration. A late night going on right now in the White House Oval Office. Here's a look at the signing of a mountain of executive orders. And this is after he signed a bunch of other orders at the Capital One Arena in front of thousands of people, then threw those signature pins into the crowds. We just saw him sign pardons for about 1,500 people involved in the January 6th riot, signed an executive order to end birthright citizenship, another to declare drug cartels and gangs terrorist organizations, declaring a national emergency on the border. The list goes on. Let's listen in because that's still happening right now.
We have Alaska, sir. This is an executive order relating to unleashing Alaska's potential as an energy reservoir for the entire nation.
And what about ANWR?
I believe that would be included in aspects of the order.
So we're opening up ANWR.
On the TikTok piece, President Trump, you and your members of your team now used to warn about the dangers of TikTok spying on Americans. What changed that you're not worried about that anymore?
Well, it depends on the deal. I mean, I may not do the deal or I may do the deal. TikTok is worthless if I don't approve it. It has to close. I learned that from the people that own it. If I don't do the deal, it's worthless, worth nothing. If I do the deal, it's worth maybe $1 trillion, $1 trillion. So if I do the deal I'm talking about doing it for the United States. If I do the deal for the United States, then I think we should get half.
The TikTok CEO.
In other words, I think the U.S. should be entitled to get half of TikTok. And congratulations, TikTok has a good partner. And that would be worth, could be $500 billion or something. It's crazy. The numbers are crazy. But it's worthless if the president doesn't sign, then it's worthless. If the president does sign, it's worth maybe $1 trillion. So I think, like a joint venture, I think we would have a joint venture with the people from TikTok. We'll see what happens. I mean, that's one of many ideas I've had.
The CEO is now. Did he say that he's open to that idea?
Who?
The CEO of TikTok is around.
Oh, I think he'd probably like it. Because he's got nothing. I mean, they really have nothing. It's passed in Congress. It gives the president a right to make a deal or to close it. And we have 90 days to make that decision. But I could see making a deal where the U.S. gets 50% of TikTok, polices it a little bit or a lot, depends on them. But remember, they make telephones in China. They make all sorts of things in China. Nobody ever complains about that. Here they're complaining about this. There's so many different products made in China, and nobody ever complained about it. The only one they complain about is TikTok. And TikTok is largely young people. I guess I have a warm spot for TikTok that I didn't have originally. But, I went on TikTok, and I won young people up by 36%, Peter. And Republicans typically don't do too well with young people. But it's a different Republican Party.
Would the U.S. government buy a portion of TikTok then, or how would it get that 50%?
No, you'd take 50% of TikTok for the approval that TikTok could continue in business. And they'd have a great partner. The U.S. would be their partner. But the U.S. essentially would be paid for doing that half of the value of TikTok.
Would there be a private sector owner as
Could
well
be,
in the
yeah,
U.S.?
could be a lot. Tell you what, every rich person has called me about TikTok.
You wanted to block TikTok. Why did you change your mind?
Because I got to use it. And remember, TikTok is largely about kids, young kids. If China's going to get information about young kids, I don't know. I think, to be honest with you, I think we have bigger problems than that. But when you take a look at telephones that are made in China and all the other things that are made in China, military equipment made in China, TikTok, I think TikTok is not their biggest problem. But there's big value in TikTok if it gets approved. If it doesn't get approved, there's no value. So if we create that value, why aren't we entitled to like half?
Sir, if you don't have any 90 days, will you shut them down?
Does Biden ever do news conferences like this? How many news conferences, Peter, has he done like this?
Like this?
None.
0.
And it would be 0 for the next infinity. For infinity, it would be 0.
Mr. President, you plan to talk to President Musk going to help implement the executive orders? I think you mentioned implementation.
Elon, no. Elon's very busy sending rocket ships up to various places with lots of satellites on them.
What is your
reaction to the confirmation of Marco Rubio, and what does it mean for Latin America?
Which one?
Marco Rubio.
Marco Rubio. You said Marco.
Marco Rubio.
Yeah, I think he's great. I think Marco's doing a fantastic job. I think he's going to get a lot of votes. I think he's going to be at 90% or something. I mean, I'm hearing very good. People know him. They know him in the Senate. They know he's good. He's doing a good job. I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know what's going to happen with that. He's got some very strong ideas, though, Marco.
You signed the TikTok order, right? Did you sign the TikTok order?
Yeah.
Yes, that was just said.
President Marco Rubio's ideas is
Just signed it.
How many
still
did you sign?
changing
Are you going to
Venezuela,
sign?
changing power. Are you still committed with Maduro leaving power in Venezuela?
Well, we're going to find out about that, too, because we're going to probably stop buying oil from Venezuela. We don't need their oil.
Another embargo like the first term?
Well, it could be, but we don't want to buy. We don't have to buy their oil. We have plenty of oil for ourselves, so
President Trump,
that'll change Venezuela quite a bit.
President Trump, there was a lot of concern about this during the campaign. A question that only works today. Are you a dictator on day one?
No. I can't imagine even being called that. No, I believe in the sanctity of the vote. The Democrats didn't because they cheated like dogs, but I believe in the sanctity, and this was too big to rig. This last election was just too big to rig. But no, really the opposite.
When do you plan to speak to President Putin?
Could be very soon.
And you talked a bit about Ukraine and Russia, but how long do you think it would take to end that conflict? And
I have to speak to President Putin. We're going to have to find out. He can't be thrilled. He's not doing so well. I mean, he's grinding it out, but most people thought that war would have been over in about 1 week. And now you're into 3 years, right? So he can't be thrilled. It's not making him look very good. Now, eventually, I mean, it's a big machine, so things will happen. But I think he'd be very well off to end that war. We have numbers that almost 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed. About 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers are killed. Russia's bigger. They have more soldiers to lose. But that's no way to run a country.
What did your TikTok order do, Mr. President?
It just gave me the right to sell it or close it. Essentially, with TikTok, I have the right to either sell it or close it. And we'll make that determination. And we may have to get an approval from China, too. I'm not sure. But I'm sure they'll approve it. And if they don't approve it, it would be somewhat of a hostile act, I think. But it's good for China if it gets approved.
Mr. President, you're not guaranteeing that TikTok will be around after 90 days from today?
No, but it could very well be. It makes sense for it to be, because it's got tremendous value. But if we create the value by approving, in other words, that approval gives it tremendous value. If that's the case, then we should be entitled to 50% as a country. You understand? You haven't heard that one before, right? That's called a joint venture. And nobody ever thought that way before. Well, I don't know. I think you have a lot of people that would be interested in TikTok with the United States as a partner.
Mr. President, what was it like walking into the Oval Office this evening?
Oh, what a great feeling. One of the better feelings I've ever had.
Do you like this count better now than in 2017?
Well, we're very experienced now. You would say nobody's ever had experience like I have. I've dealt with some very good people. I've dealt with some very bad people, and I know who the bad ones are and the good ones are. Don't forget, I was very successful in primarily the real estate business. And people used to say, who's worse, a politician or a vicious real estate developer? And I'd always say, the real estate developer is far worse. But after about 3 months and getting to know scum like Adam Schiff and other people like that, I said, no, actually, real estate people are quite nice by comparison.
You said you plan to speak with President Putin soon. What about President Zelensky, and what's your message?
Yeah, I would, but he's told me he wants to make a deal. Zelensky wants to make a deal. I don't know if Putin does. He might not. I don't know. He should make a deal. I think he's destroying Russia by not making a deal. I think Russia's going to be in big trouble. You take a look at their economy. You take a look at the inflation in Russia. So I would hope. I got along with him great, and you know, I would hope he wants to make a deal.
Mr. President, are you keeping U.S. sanctions on Russia until he makes a deal?
Well, sanctions or tariffs. I think the word tariff is much better because it keeps your dollar stronger. I think tariffs are more effective. I mean, I use sanctions on Iran. Iran was broke. When I left office, Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, none. They were flat broke. And October 7th would have never happened. And I think you all know that. It would have never happened. They had no money. Now they're rich, but, you know, they're weakened in a different way. I would say that the one attack by Israel really set them back. It really set them back. The Pagers and others. You know, the attack on air defense was a bad attack for Iran.
What are you signing now, sir?
It's an executive order relating to reforms to the federal workforce, including to the senior executive service.
We're getting rid of all of the cancer. I call it cancer. The cancer caused by the Biden administration.
How confident are you, Mr. President, that you can keep the ceasefire in Gaza and conclude the 3 phases of this deal?
I'm not confident. That's not our war, it's their war, but I'm not confident. But I think they're very weakened on the other side.
Do you support the 2-state
Gaza, boy, I looked at a picture of Gaza. Gaza is like a massive demolition site. That place it's really got to be rebuilt in a different way.
Do you plan to help rebuilding Gaza?
I might. You know, Gaza is interesting. It's a phenomenal location. On the sea, best weather. You know, everything's good. It's like some beautiful things could be done with it, but it's very interesting. But some fantastic things could be done with Gaza.
How do you see the future in governance for Gaza?
Well, it depends. I can't imagine you could have, well, you certainly can't have the people that were there. Most of them are dead, by the way, right? Most of them are dead. But they didn't exactly run it well. Run viciously and badly. So you can't have that.
Mr. President, on TikTok, sir, would you pause any decision on Chinese tariffs until you know what the resolution on TikTok will be?
No, if China didn't approve it, we could put tariffs on China. Don't forget, China charges us tariffs, and we charge them very little, except for what I did. I put a lot of, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars. But until I came along, China never paid 10 cents to this country. They ripped us off, and they never paid anything. But, like, if we wanted to make a deal with TikTok, and it was a good deal, and China wouldn't approve it, then I think ultimately they'd approve it because we'd put tariffs on China. Maybe. I'm not saying I would, but you certainly could do that. And if we said, well, if you're not going to approve it, then that's a certain hostility, and we'll put tariffs of 25, 30, 40, 50%, even 100%. And if we did that, I think they'd approve it.
President Trump, you've seen the other living presidents a couple times in the last few months. If you ever had to call on one of them for advice about anything that's going on here, which one would you call?
It's an interesting. Well, I thought Bill Clinton was a very good politician. I don't think he was used properly. I think they disrespected him. When Hillary was running, he came back and he said, you know, you better get up to Michigan and Wisconsin. You remember that, Peter. Every house has a Trump sign on it. And they all laughed at him because the Republicans hadn't won Michigan or Wisconsin for decades, long time. And they all laughed at Bill Clinton. Like, the hell does he know? And he turned out to be right because I won both of them. And then we just won both in this election, too. We won Wisconsin and Michigan and every other swing state. We won all the swing states, all 7. They talked about 7 swing states. We won them all. So, but Bill Clinton he had a great political sense, I think.
You looked like you were having a good conversation with President Obama at President
I
Carter's
was.
funeral.
And you'd like to know what it was? Oh. Everybody wants to know. I know, I wouldn't want to, but we were having some crazy conversations. Why do you asking a question like that? I don't think you want to know. You might not.
Can you just sign it?
You might be insulted.
It's an executive order relating to holding former government officials accountable for unlawful disclosure of sensitive information. This next one, sir, is a declaration of a national energy emergency.
So you also
That's a big one. You know what that allows you to do? That means you can do whatever you have to do to get out of that problem. And we do have that kind of an emergency.
President Trump, at some point will you use your powers of the presidency to tell Americans who are concerned about drones?
Yeah.
A few weeks ago,
Yeah.
what exactly
I will.
was happening? Can you tell us now?
In fact, I'd like to know because I just got here.
What do you think?
I just came here. I've been here for what, 15 minutes now.
Do people listening, because this is going out live.
And I got to read this letter too. Because of you, I found this letter.
I can read it for you.
It's interesting. Yeah, I know you would. Your father would too.
But is it anything these drones? Is it anything that people need to be worried
No, I think
about?
it's terrible. I would like to find out what it is and tell the people.
And can you commit to some kind of...
In fact, I'd like to do that. Could we find out what that was, Susie? Okay? Yeah, why don't we find out? Immediately. I mean, I can't imagine it's an enemy or there would have been, people would have gotten blown up all over. Maybe they were testing things. I don't know why they wouldn't have said what it was. They had a lot of them flying over Bedminster, which is interesting, right?
And with the events today and yesterday, was everything moved inside just for cold weather, or was there some kind of security concern?
No security. Because they had everything shut down to drones. You can shut that down pretty easily if you're sophisticated. They're very sophisticated, these people. No, it was just cold weather. And we made a good move because, first of all, I thought it was incredible in the Capitol today. You know why I liked it? Because I got great reviews on that speech. I got great reviews. Can you believe it? They actually were fair. Maybe the fake news is changing.
Unleashing energy production.
Yeah, unleashing energy production. But I thought it was, I think having it in the Capitol is great. It's obviously, you can take care of the people you have to take care of. The city was booming. And if we would have done it outside, people would have been hurt because it was really cold. It was looked sunny. But when you stood outside for 10 minutes, people were running back in. It was really cold and really windy. The wind brings it down a lot. So we made the right decision. You couldn't have stayed. I don't think you could have had it out. You know how cold it was today. It was, people went out for a little while just to test it. They couldn't stay out more than 10 minutes. They all came back in. So we would have had a disaster if we did that, and people would have been hurt.
The unlawful disclosure, is that related to the Hunter Biden situation?
Which one?
The one on unlawful disclosures by federal officials, is that related to
No, I think it's just more general than that. It's not Hunter Biden. I was surprised that President Biden would go and pardon his whole family because that makes him look very guilty. I could have pardoned my family. I could have pardoned myself, my family. I said, if I do that, it's going to make me look very guilty. I don't think I'd be sitting here, frankly. If I did that, I don't think I'd be sitting here right now because I would have shown that you're guilty. But by pardoning his brother or brothers, by pardoning all of those people that he pardoned, by pardoning J6, the Unselect Committee, they destroyed all of the documents. They deleted all of the information. There's no information. And a lot of the information pertains to Nancy Pelosi because she was given 100, I mean, you know this, it's on tape with her daughter. Nancy Pelosi was responsible for not taking advantage of 10,000 soldiers or 1,000. You wouldn't have you could have used 400. It was a relatively small crowd. It wasn't the crowd that was at the mall. It was a small crowd. So I was a little bit surprised that he did it because it makes him look guilty. I mean, he's going to have to live with it. Now, with that being said, it's unbelievable precedent it creates for a president. But the precedent is unbelievable. Now maybe every president that leaves office, they're going to pardon every person they ever met so they don't have some lunatic like deranged Jack Smith, who's a total lunatic, by the way. Not a smart guy, he's a dummy. But we beat the hell out of him. and I helped my reputation.
Do you think you'd have to do the same thing at the end of this term?
Well, I guess now I have precedent to do it. I wouldn't want to do that. No, I think it makes you look very guilty. I think it makes Biden look very bad, very weak, and very guilty. And I mean, he pardoned everybody. How about this J6 committee? Why is he pardoning them? The reason is because if you delete and destroy documentation, everything, they have nothing because they were guilty as hell. They rigged it. It was a rigged deal. And when you do that, they look very bad. But I was a little surprised he did it. Liz Cheney, I mean, she's a lunatic. And she lost by the greatest margin in the history of a politician running for Congress, like 40 points. The reason it was the greatest is because anybody losing that badly is going to drop out. But she's a nut job. She doesn't drop out. You know, she just keeps chugging forward. And she lost by almost 40 points. That's the biggest number anybody's ever lost by. But why would Biden do that? He pardoned her and pardoned everybody. The reason is that they destroyed documents. And if you're even in a civil case, which this wouldn't be, I mean, people go to jail for a long time for doing that. What's this one?
That's unleashing American energy, sir. It relates to easing permitting processes and other regulatory systems to ensure that we can produce energy efficiently to drive the American economy forward.
President Trump, looking around the office, we noticed some changes from the way that Biden had it set up. Can you confirm that you have added back the Diet Coke play?
I think this, first of all, I just got here. So my people came in. They have extraordinary decorator sense, right? Let me just see some of the pictures. Oh, that's a good one. I could live with him. I could live with George Washington, I can tell you. I could live with Thomas Jefferson. I could live with most of them. They took a very safe route. They don't have any bad ones up there.
Withdrawing from
What is this one?
Withdrawing from the World Health Organization, sir.
Ooh, that's a big one. So we paid $500 million to World Health when I was here, and I terminated it. China with 1.4 billion people. We have 350 to pay. We have, nobody knows what we have because so many people came in illegally, but let's say we have 325. They had 1.4 billion. They were paying 39 million, we were paying 500 million. It seemed a little unfair to me. So that wasn't the reason, but I dropped out. They offered me to come back for 39 million. In theory, it should be less than that, but, you know. And when Biden came back, they came back for 500 million. He knew that you could have come back for 39 million. They wanted us back so badly, so we'll see what happens. Pretty sad, though. Think of it. China pays 39 million, and we pay 500 million. And China's a bigger country.
Mr. President, you spoke about inflation today in your remarks. What actions are you taking today that will have a direct impact for Americans on their everyday costs to bring the costs down?
The biggest thing and factor for inflation is energy. They screwed up my energy policy, and then they went back to it. You know, they hurt it really badly, and then they went back to it, and they started drilling more, but by that time it was too late. Many of these things that we're signing and that Doug Burgum is going to be signing, and Chris Wright, who's phenomenal, you know, Energy, Department of Energy. We're going to be taking a lot, we're going to make a lot of money from energy. We have more than anybody else. We're going to make a lot of money from energy. We're going to make a lot of money from tariffs. You know, European Union charges us, they have a VAT tax of 20%, but it's really much higher than that. And that's the equivalent, almost the equivalent of a tariff. And they're tough. They're very tough. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm product. They don't take almost anything. And yet we take their cars and we take their farm product. We take a lot from them. So, you know, we have like a $300 billion deficit with the European Union. So we'll straighten that out with either tariffs or they have to buy our oil. The one thing they can do, our oil and gas, the one thing they can do to catch up quickly, buy our oil and gas.
Will you travel,
and they should do that.
Will you travel to China
Yeah, it could be. I've had the invite. I would do it, yeah.
Talking about the European Union and the tariffs, like, what do you mean when you say that European Union conflict is part of BRICS?
That it what?
BRICS.
Oh, BRICS. No, I was talking about BRICS. BRICS is 6 nations. I think it's 7 nations. And they were looking to do a number in the United States. And if they do that, they won't be happy about what's going to happen to them.
Are you still considering a universal tariff, Mr. President, on all countries?
I may, yeah, but we're not ready for that yet. We may wrap it, because essentially all countries take advantage of the U.S. We don't make any good deals in the U.S. It's amazing in a way that we exist. We don't make good deals. We don't have any good deals. We have a deficit with almost, not all, there are a couple, I won't tell you their names, because I don't want them to find out about it, because they'll feel stupid. But there are a couple of countries that actually don't make money with us. But I don't want to let you know, because they'll immediately change that. But we're gonna do. I tell you what, our country has an amazing economic future. I really believe that.
What kind of universal tariff if you did do one?
Well, you'd put a universal tariff on anybody doing business in the United States, because they're coming in and they're stealing our wealth, they're stealing our jobs, they're stealing our companies, they're hurting our companies. So you put a tariff on to keep them from doing that.
Mr. President, you surrounded yourself with a whole bunch of billionaires today. President Biden has in his farewell address wondered about oligarchy. I'm wondering if you can respond to that.
Well, he had a lot of guys, and then they found out that he didn't know what the hell he was talking about, and I think they deserted him. They deserted him, those same guys. Look, I don't make pretenses, smart guys, but there are a lot of smart people around, but they did desert him. They were all with him, every one of them. Now they're all with me. I don't know. It's not going to get anything from me. I don't need money. But I do want the nation to do well, and they're smart people, and they have, they create a lot of jobs. And if they don't do it, China's going to do it. What they've done is they've taken industries and they've taken it away. They outsmarted China. And, we sort of like that. It's okay. They've done a great job. A lot of them. Not all of them.
Protecting women from radical gender ideologies.
Ooh.
Mr. President, going back to the World Health Organization, you were the president during COVID. Don't you see the importance of an organization like that to coordinate a global response?
Sure, I do, but not when you're being ripped off like we are by the World Health. World Health ripped us off. Everybody rips off the United States, and that's it. It's not going to happen anymore. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, guys, let's go.
One last one, sir. This is your Martin Luther King Day proclamation.
Thank you, Press. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Press. Thank you. Let's go.
And that was quite the historic moment we saw President Donald Trump in the Oval Office after being sworn in as the President of the United States, answering a litany of questions from reporters there while talking about the executive orders that he was signing. That list is a long one. He talked about TikTok, the deal with TikTok. He talked about tariffs, withdrawing from the World Health Organization just a few moments ago, even asking about the drone situation in real time, saying, hey, I just got into this office, but turning to one of his staff members saying, hey, can we figure this out? Again, all of this happening in real time. We've got Vaughn Hilliard with us to help break down some of what we saw. Vaughn, so many things happening all at once in so many different directions. What do you think we're going to see implemented the fastest here? Are pardons and maybe release from prison tonight for some of those involved with January 6th?
Right, Gadi. I mean, let's be very clear. This is remarkable to see a president of the United States on day one take such extensive actions as this number of executive orders that we saw him sign this afternoon at the arena at what amounted to a political rally. It was the replacement for the parade. But there inside of the Oval Office, there's 3 balls that he still has to get to this evening, but he's still inside the Oval Office signing and explaining these executive orders. And to your question, Gadi, the top line here, we must start with those pardons of January 6 defendants and those who were found guilty or pleaded guilty. More than 1,500 of them given pardons, just 6 individuals, potentially commutations, essentially the president saying that they are going to evaluate their circumstances further. There are more than 170 individuals that pleaded guilty to assaulting police officers on January 6th. There were 14 individuals who were found guilty on seditious conspiracy charges in an effort to stop the transfer of power and to keep Donald Trump installed in office. All of these people are going to be released in the upcoming weeks here. And it is really a striking moment in this American democracy, seeing those images that we watched 4 years ago, in which there was a violent effort to stop those proceedings and keep Donald Trump in office, and guilty convictions and guilty pleas by more than 1,100 of them. And I think that this is really a defining moment. But also executive orders-wise, you're looking at an effort to end birthright citizenship in the country. Under the 14th Amendment, it's quite explicit that if you are born, you are a citizen of the United States. But Donald Trump, they're telling those reporters in the Oval Office that he is seeking to challenge the constitutionality of that. But then also there's threats about the tariffs. You mentioned TikTok. Essentially him saying that if TikTok, the parent company, the Chinese company, does not sell TikTok or at least share in the investment of TikTok with an American dealer, that he would be ready to impose up to 100% on tariffs. This was quite a moment to hear him also call the southern border a national emergency and declare cartels foreign terrorist organizations. What does that mean? Donald Trump could potentially try to seek to use the military in a more aggressive, forceful way on the border, potentially even target the cartels themselves by using presidential national emergency proclamation. It gives the power to the president, a lot of power that could be challenged by the courts. And so really today, just these last hours since he was sworn in, is not the typical pomp and circumstance that we are used to seeing presidents carry out on Inauguration Day, but instead he's keeping everybody at these balls holding as he goes forward with these executive orders that undoubtedly a great number of them will be highly likely challenged in the courts, the constitutionality. But Donald Trump sending a clear message that he intends to be very aggressive with his agenda from the outset of taking office.
And we're going to go super deep into as many of these executive orders as we possibly can, but you have such an interesting look into these balls and all of the things that have been happening throughout the day. And I got to say, we have seen some very wild pairings at all these gatherings. Just a little while ago, Zuckerberg eating with a Supreme Court justice, Sam Altman with the Paul brothers. What kind of universe collisions are we going to see at these balls tonight? And what is happening behind the scenes? Because so much of what we're seeing is being told by the president as it happens, and yet so much of the power is concentrated right now in Washington, D.C. in a way we've never seen before.
Right. The best way to put it is that this is not 2017 Inauguration Day for Donald Trump. You mentioned these big tech CEOs who 8 years ago, there were CEOs who were calling out Donald Trump and his administration in the early months of his tenure in office. This go around, they're essentially cozying up with Donald Trump and providing $1 million worth of donations to his inaugural committee, appearing inside of the Capitol with him. Here at these balls, we're going to see donors and other supporters. This is very much still a great fanfare for those who voted in and donated to get Donald Trump back into office. He won this election resoundingly across the battleground states, and these balls are an opportunity for Donald Trump. As he said on social media a few days ago, in all caps, everyone wants to be my friend. Because this go around, unlike 8 years ago, you're not seeing protests in the streets in Washington, D.C. Instead, you're saying even Democrats suggest that they want to find ways to work and partner with Donald Trump because Republicans have the majority. And instead of hearing overwhelming calls for resistance, there is an acknowledgement that there is, among Democrats and those opposed to Donald Trump's efforts, that a lot of those actions are going to have to take place in the courts or at the local level in communities around the country. But for those individuals in Washington, D.C., lawmakers specifically, donors, CEOs, the best way to curry favor with Donald Trump and to get his ear is to have a open relationship and dialogue with him. And much like foreign leaders who we have seen come down to Mar-a-Lago over the last weeks to meet with him in person, folks have realized that, fighting Donald Trump over the airwaves is not really much of a pathway to success in terms of being heard or having any of your issues have much sway inside of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, inside of his Oval Office.
And Vaughn, I mean, this is day one. Tomorrow is the first full day of the presidency. Any chance anyone's going to sleep in? I mean, what's tomorrow going to look like?
I mean, I don't know what my day tomorrow looks like, Gadi, and I'm sure that a lot of the White House staffers are not clear about what their day looks like, other than we know that they're going to roll out more executive orders. It was suggested that they were going to release more than 50 of them today alone, but they were still working on some additional drafts and would be releasing those in the coming days. Of course, in real time here tonight, people like Marco Rubio are being confirmed to be Secretary of State. He's actively trying to get his cabinet members pressed through. Some of those confirmation hearings will be continuing to move forward. There's also discussions inside of the Pentagon, the Department of Justice, of who's working in the acting capacities before Donald Trump's picks get ultimately sworn into office. And of course, legislatively, these next 2 years are so important for Donald Trump. He has majorities in the Senate, in the House, and I've talked about on Capitol Hill wanting to push through one big legislative package that would address immigration, energy, other legislative priorities, tax cut extensions. Donald Trump has said he wants to work with Speaker Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune to get that into the hands of Republican lawmakers in these coming months as soon as possible to try to get that deal and voted on.
Vaughn Hilliard in for a very late night for, I don't know, eternity. Vaughn Hilliard, thank you so much for joining us.
Here we go.
And President Trump is starting his second term with a hard stance on immigration. Tonight, he unveiled those 10 plans, those 10 executive orders, all about border and immigration policy. And we can go through some of them real quick here. The big one, Trump is declaring a national emergency at the border. He's also ending the catch and release program, which allows detainees to go free until their court dates. Third, he's bringing back the Remain in Mexico policy, which would require migrants to get asylum in Mexico until their court dates here. Mexico President Claudia Sheinbaum is pretty clear she's not on board with that one yet, but he's talking about possible tariffs on Mexico. And next, he's ending birthright citizenship, which we understood was guaranteed by the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. He's also designated drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. Joining us now is an incredible panel of our friends, Washington correspondent Yamiche Alcindor and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Yamiche, there is so much pomp and circumstance of the signing of the pins that we saw thrown into the crowd and then the Oval Office there. And then there's the implementation. What do you see going into effect first here?
Well, it's really important that you talk about the implementation. And I know you touched on some of the executive orders, but because there was really a flurry of them, I want to walk folks through some of them and then talk about which ones could be implemented in short order. So, of course, he declared a national emergency at the border. He also is pushing to end birthright citizenship. Hopefully we can put it up for folks. This is part of the U.S. Constitution. So for that one, that's going to be something that's going to be harder to implement, and there will be legal challenges there. But the national security, the national emergency effect, that would be pretty immediate. There's also the end the catch and release of undocumented immigrants. Reinstating Remain in Mexico is an interesting one because already we've seen the CPB-1 application, which was set up under the Biden administration as a way to curb people crossing into the southwest border illegally to request asylum. That's going to be something that's already gone. We've already seen migrants at the border crying, say that they wanted to be using that app. He's also going to resume border wall construction. That's something that could happen in short order. Suspend the refugee resettlement for at least 4 months, and then designate criminal cartels and others as foreign terrorist groups. That's something that could happen in short order. And then to clarify the military's role in protecting the territorial integrity of the United States. That's going to be an interesting one to watch because the big question is, will there be troops on the border? The Trump administration and officials say that that's something that they want to see happen. How quickly we see that happen will be very interesting. Part of the reason why we have to talk about how quickly all of this happens is because we're already seeing legal challenges tonight go into effect. So as we look at that list of places and look at that list of things that are happening, we should just keep in mind that some of these are already being challenged in court. Gadi?
Yeah, and Danny, right now, I mean, birthright citizenship, you read the Constitution, it seems pretty clearly protected by the 14th Amendment. does signing this executive order do anything against the Constitution, or is this just definitely setting this up for a legal showdown in court?
Yes to your second question. This will obviously be challenged right away. But this issue actually came up way back during the first Trump administration. And when it first came up, I have to admit, I heard that, and I immediately thought, well, wait a minute. Birthright citizenship is as immutable a law, immutable a right, as some of the other rights enshrined in the Constitution. And then I read about it, and I found some really interesting academic articles. And the thinking goes like this. The language says anyone born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And there's a lot of debate about what that means. And there are those on the right who say that, well, subject to the jurisdiction thereof means that, say, the child of an ambassador comes here from another country, has a child. That child is not a citizen by means of birthright citizenship. So the thinking goes on that side that it is not a guarantee because that person must be additionally subject to the jurisdiction, and the jurisdiction means someone arguably was already a citizen. That's the thinking. So now we're going to find what happens when the rubber meets the road. We're going to see this go to court, and I imagine we're going to see it go to court relatively quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that is quite the heavy lift that the word "and" is doing. It makes sense as you lay it out there. But when we're talking about sending things to court right now, he's got a slim majority in both the House and the Senate. He's got a very friendly Supreme Court. He's going to be appointing judges left and right here. Like, what does the judiciary look like under Trump? And when these challenges are referred to the judiciary, like, what does it look like is going to happen?
Is that for me? If so, yes. The judiciary, yeah. We already know what the judiciary looks like because we've had a test run, 4 years under Trump 1, and now here we are in Trump 2. And if you want an idea of what kinds of folks he appoints to courts, you can look at the Supreme Court. You can look at some of the lower courts, everyone from district court. You got Aileen Cannon up to the Supreme Court. You have 3 justices. Really rare for a president in one term to get 3 justices. But that is the roll of the dice that the Constitution created by allowing for presidential appointment of justices. Some presidents get a lot. Some presidents might get none. They might get 1. So it's all about luck at this point. There are some justices that are likely to either no longer be on the bench after these 4 years. So he may be appointing more to the Supreme Court. But to take a look at who he appoints, you just look at who he's appointed. And it's obviously people who are Federalist Society types, people who are textualists, originalists, and exactly the kinds of folks he's appointed already. And by the way, the modern trend is young. Look for young. If there's a 23-year-old, 24-year-old judge that can be appointed and he can get him through Congress, he will. That's the new model for judges because they serve for life.
24 years old. Interesting. And Yamiche, Trump also talked a lot about the Alien Enemies Act. I want to play that clip for you if you've got it.
And by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities.
1798. I mean, the Alien Enemies Act, that is definitely a wartime measure, and yet declaring war on cartels, they didn't have like drones and precision strikes and like SEAL teams in 1798. All of this kind of feels like there's the possibility of setting up action against cartels in another country, Mexico perhaps. Yamiche, do you think we might see military action in a place like Mexico or possibly Colombia or somewhere in Latin America?
It's a good question. We're not quite sure what the answer is going to be. Time will tell. We know for a fact that this new Trump administration is directing the military to prioritize the border, prioritize really putting what they call the territorial integrity of the United States front and center of the military. I also think we have to think about what is the Alien Enemies Act. And I had to look it up myself. It allows presidents to detain, relocate, and deport non-citizens from a country considered an enemy of the United States during wartime. time. And this has only been used 3 times in history. The first time was in the War of 1812. Then you had World War I and World War II. So it has been used before, but for it to be used in this way would be different. So we have to see how the Trump administration really does this. But there is this sense in talking to Trump administration officials today that they are really prepared to use all the muscles of the federal government, including the military, to make this happen. Gadi.
Yeah, it gives the war on drugs a whole new meaning. Yamiche, Danny, thank you so much. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, Silicon Valley front and center at today's inauguration. So what does seeing Elon Musk, Tim Cook, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg all there together mean? Well, that's just ahead, so stay tuned. Trump technically got sworn in today, but if you were on TikTok, you might have thought his first act as president sort of happened this weekend. That's because after more twists and turns, and I can count, TikTok did shut down for a bit. Then if you logged in last night, you probably saw it pop back online with this sort of thank you note to President Trump's efforts. And then today, TikTok CEO was at the inauguration, and he's sitting next to, look at that, this is for real, Tulsi Gabbard, who ironically is Trump's pick to run national intelligence. So was this a keep your friends close and your TikTok CEOs even closer kind of thing? Or was this next level trolling, which we probably will see a lot of over the next few years? Who knows? Hopefully our next guest does know. Joining us now is NBC's Brian Chung. Brian, so how long is TikTok off the hook here? And what about the whole national security threat on like multiple level stuff? Does that all just disappear now?
Yeah, Gadi. Well, I mean, TikTok's effectively been off the hook since yesterday when TikTok came back online after a brief few hours of going dark Saturday night into Sunday. TikTok coming back on after what they said was assurance from the incoming Trump administration, again, just a few hours away from inauguration, that had committed on Truth Social to allowing TikTok to operate and trying to basically commit to some sort of executive order, which, by the way, we have not seen yet today, that would give TikTok an extension of some period of time while they try to work out a deal, which now President Trump says would ideally look like some sort of 50-50 ownership of the United States having 50% of the TikTok U.S. company, and then the other 50% presumably from the Chinese companies or some other type of Chinese entity. Regardless, it has given the assurance enough, at least to TikTok, to turn their servers back on, although I want to point out, Gadi, that you still cannot access or download TikTok on the Google Play Store or on the Apple App Store. It seems like those two companies, Sundar Pichai over at Google and Tim Cook, by the way, both in attendance at inauguration, apparently they haven't been swayed enough by the assuasion since that they won't be penalized under the current law for offering the TikTok app on the store, because, again, it's still not available on our phones as of right now, Gadi.
Yeah, very notable, given that they are the biggest players in this game here. Meanwhile, man, I hate to pick up on our last conversation, which was like, what is money? But we just saw Trump and his wife, Melania, launch a pair of meme coins over the weekend before he became president. And I hate to harsh the crypto hype, but like, what are the chances that this ends up at the Supreme Court and we get an emoluments decision from SCOTUS in the foreseeable futures on this? Like, founding fathers, like, what would they have said about crypto?
Yeah, well, let's back up first a little bit and talk about the crypto project, which didn't exist last week, and now this could be tens of billions of dollars by some estimates in net worth for the president. This is what they call the Trump meme coin. It was released over the weekend, and by some estimates, again, tens of billions of dollars in worth as people snatch them up. You can imagine a lot of enthusiasts who support Donald Trump wanting to get into this meme coin, which, by the way, it's a meme coin. They're selling it as a meme coin, so they're acknowledging that there really is no underlying value to this beyond the fact that it's just a really cool thing, I guess, to have. The Melania coin followed shortly thereafter. Now, what this means in terms of the conflicts of interest here, you can imagine there's never been a U.S. president that's tried to do this before. So there's a lot of questions over emoluments, is kind of that fancy word that you bring up, which is the term that is set out by the Constitution that says a sitting president cannot profit off of foreign entities, and whether or not a Chinese government entity or a Russian entity could purchase up a bunch of these memes, which could in some ways indirectly help the president profit. That's an open question. But again, Gadi, there is no playbook for this. And there have been some emoluments challenges for other types of business ventures during Trump's first administration with basically not many degrees of success. So this is going to be another one of those gray areas that we'll see in the next few years.
Yeah, in a very different court now. And what does this meme coin or both of these meme coins mean for crypto and by proxy the U.S. dollar? I know meme coin, they're not supposed to have any value, and yet, like we just saw the chart, 39 real American dollars is what it's trading at right now. What does this mean for crypto as a whole, for Bitcoin, for Ethereum, for the entire space as we look at the next 4 years?
Well, first off, you do mention the U.S. dollar. This amounts to no challenge at all to the dominance of the U.S. dollar. It's not like we should expect to see Trump meme coin being used as a means of transaction at your local grocery store or at your coffee shop. However, I think it has massive implications for the crypto space because basically what we've seen in the meme coin space, even outside of President Trump using it, this is kind of the most extreme example that we've seen so far, is that this is just public-facing people taking advantage of their public-facing image to make a lot of money. And we've seen this not just happen in the politics space. We're seeing it in other areas as well. In fact, the pastor who spoke at inauguration today, Gadi, right after he spoke, launched his own coin. So this is something where you're going to have a lot of concerns over what they call rug pulls, where people offer these types of securities. They cash out instantly. The people that are still left holding the bag lose all of their money. We've seen that happen with other types of things like the Hawk Tuah coin. I won't go into it, but nonetheless, a lot of concern over whether or not this could be used nefariously. Although I want to point out experts I've talked to have not said they see rug pull signs, at least in Trump meme for right now.
Yeah, I was wondering if you're going to mention that rug pull. NBC's Brian Chung. Thank you so much, bro. Meanwhile, you know who got some of the best seats in the House today? Just behind the Trump family and in front of his own cabinet picks were the titans of tech, some of the richest men in the entire world. Take a look. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Google CEO Sundar Pichai. You see there elsewhere in the Capitol Rotunda was TikTok's Shou Chew, Apple's Tim Cook, OpenAI's Sam Altman. Talk about a paradigm shift. Don't forget, some of those same people warned about Trump's rise to power just 8 years ago. Some even kicked him off of their platform. So what message is today sending? Let's bring in senior reporter at Business Insider, Catherine Tengelakis-Lippert. Catherine, thanks so much for being with us. First off, what do you think this means for Trump's second term as far as tech policy goes? We've been describing everything from like social media to AI as the wild, wild west for a really long time. What now?
Well, I think this is certainly an indicator that Trump likes to surround himself with some of the most influential people in business and tech, and that they will likely have some of their policy positions, at the very least, heard, if not very much considered, as Trump goes to sign new things into law, make new regulations or not. In some cases, we can probably expect kind of a pivot more toward innovation rather than regulation, which is in keeping with Trump's general themes. I think we'll probably see some shifts in antitrust law. I think it's really kind of an indication of the people he likes to keep around and the kinds of things that they'll be able to whisper into his ear.
And real talk, in so many ways, social media has become the media. A lot of influencers have way bigger audiences than traditional news outlets. And we hear it time and time again from people like Elon Musk. You are the media now. And they are the ones that own the algorithms here. So is that row of people that we saw standing there, is that like the new fourth estate?
I think that's certainly fair to argue. I think there's also some element, of course, Jeff Bezos does famously own the Post, and I think there's some element of new media meets old media kind of power being met there. But certainly Donald Trump is a fan of that direct-to-viewer or direct-to-voter kind of communication, and I think there's kind of a real indication here that he's leaning hard into that with the people that he's surrounding himself with now.
And if these men control the algorithms and most Americans get their news from those algorithms in one way or another, where does oversight come from?
That's the question. I think Elon Musk has had us kind of pivot toward this community notes kind of method of content moderation. We've seen Meta kind of follow similarly in that there's kind of a shift away from traditional content moderation policies and fact checking and that sort of thing. I think that can be a little bit challenging to then say where is this going to come from now. I think there's going to be a lot of faith put into our fellow Americans going forward, trying to kind of course correct when we do see something inaccurate online. But I think there's kind of a diminishing relevance to legacy media such as ourselves. And I think that can be a little bit of a challenging position to be put in. And we're really going to kind of see how it's going to shake out. It's really remains unclear what the future holds here.
It almost sounds like we have a community notes office in the works, possibly on the horizon. Catherine, thanks so much for joining us. Really insightful conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. And we're wrapping up this hour of coverage on a very historic day with a lot of unprecedented moments during the second inauguration of President Trump. Take a look at some of what stood out.
Mr. Speaker, good morning. How do you feel this morning?
It's exciting.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, the Honorable Donald John Trump.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
The golden age of America begins right now. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
From sea to shining sea.
And then we went out to the helicopter, though, just prior to this, and said goodbye. And it's a custom, and the wind is blowing like crazy. And with the hat that she's wearing, she almost blew away. We almost lost off her. She was being elevated. That was a beautiful place to have an inauguration tonight.
And we are just getting started in these next 4 years. But for now, that is going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. Complete coverage of the second inauguration of Donald J. Trump continues right here, right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.